Audio recording. All right. So 1, 2. So today's topic is on the matter of Kali Yuga. Just continuing where we left off. Kali Yuga, hypocrisy, specifically this culture of intolerance and allergy to sattva within the yoga, pseudo yoga bubble. We've spoken how the deceit and cheating is rampant in this day and age, and it's not just rampant but celebrated. It's condoned. People have this exchange of deceit where you can identify somebody's disingenuity or just misleading tendencies, and that by spotting that out, that gives you the capacity or the license to do it yourself, right? So nowadays people go out and basically purchase their yogic platform, by going to do any of these teacher trainers or teacher trainings or so-called teaching trainings like that. It's just insanity, actually, to believe that you go, and it's not a belief. Like, I know that people are more crooks than stupid. I think in this case, people play stupid, right? Like they hide behind ignorance and stupidity, but the reality is just being a crook, right? How would you ever in a million years believe that you go like a week or 2 weeks, whatever it is, for a 200 300 hour whatever, and then you are capacitated to start teaching something as profound as add all the adjectives that you can find in terms of what yoga is, because you still won't be able to describe that transcendental science nature of yoga. Like it's beyond, right? So it doesn't take a week or 2 weeks. It takes lifetimes to actually approach that goal. Many thousands and thousands try, and out of those thousands, most of them those fails. Out of those thousands of people, maybe one actually starts getting close to it, and usually those that get close also fail. That's what is said in Bhagavad Gita. So this angle is the most ambitious endeavor, right? Like this is the highest. It's the highest endeavor in human capability. Humans are endowed with that slight possibility of transcendence, right? We have the tools, we just don't know how to use them, and here come an army of cheaters that claim to know how to use this very sophisticated equipment we are allotted, and then just start completely making a mess and fools out of themselves also. I'm sure, with my very limited, almost no understanding of music theory and technique at playing, let's say, I don't know, the piano, and I marched into, a big college of music or whatever, conservatory of music, where real musicians who've dedicated their lives to the study of music, etc. And I just marched my way in and just told them, hey, I feel music because I'm able to listen to music, right? So I understand music in my heart, and therefore I'm here to show you the truth about music. Just hear from me. And then I just started to mess around with instruments and whatever. Very soon they could spot that maybe I have some intention, right? Like maybe, and that's just throwing the benefit of the doubt at me. My heart's in the right place, but you don't know anything about music. I'm sorry to say, but like it's just very obvious that you don't. Maybe you have some affinity for music. Of course, you're able to listen and perhaps enjoy the music, but not very much understanding or knowledge on music. So similar thing happens in yoga. You don't have any qualification, any education, you don't have any instruction, no bona fide spiritual teacher, master in yoga claims you as a student, so that's already a huge red flag and sketchy. And yet you parade yourself, on the streets of this sort of spiritual context as someone who's knowledgeable, actually. But for those that are actually investing their time, effort, lives into studying yoga, practicing yoga properly from a disciplic succession with the authority of a tradition behind them, it's very easy actually to spot the cheater, spot the liar. You just need to wait for them to yap, and immediately, you can say like, all right, that person doesn't know anything that they're talking about. This is at the first instance, it's a little bit laughable, right? Like, it's just plain ignorance, and someone being proud of their ignorance also. So it's almost funny until that starts actually taking traction, until that's actually the vast majority of people. That's doing an entire disservice, not just to the public in general, but to all the actual legitimate traditions, right? And this brings us to the next point, which is this inspired crowd, right? One is just in general a culture of intolerance, which is predicted to be happening and very strong during the Kali Yuga. That there's just no tolerance for truth. There's no tolerance for the strength of truth. It's too much, too uncomfortable. So the threshold for discomfort within these so-called yoga circles is minimum, or sometimes it's just null. There is no threshold at all for discomfort, and that's a huge problem. I mean, essential, fundamental issue. You cannot do yoga if you have no capacity to withstand discomfort. One way to define yoga would be to actually dig in or lean into that discomfort. It's gonna be uncomfortable, like yes or yes, because we are so used and so very much attached to our material sense enjoyment and sources of material happiness. And here comes true yoga to say like, well, that you give all that up. Maybe you cannot give that up entirely today, but there's a whole system to actually start cutting off all this nonsense and irrelevant stuff. But what does modern pseudo yoga do? It says, no, that's way too violent, way too much, way too uncomfortable. Why should I give up any of that stuff? Let's try to figure out a different way. And the figuring out comes speculatively, it comes from the imagination, and says like, I think the real way of doing this, so my truth is that I should be able to still enjoy everything that I enjoy, but just have this spiritual mentality, that I should be good. So I give myself these comfort blankets, appease my own conscience, which is sounding the alarm. No, this is cheating. This is hypocritical. Don't do this. And I drown that, natural culpability and how you say, like alarm of guilt, that this is wrong. This is the wrong stance to take. I drown it by means of inspiration, external inspiration. So this is what's happening now, and this is a point that need to be addressed. That on one side we have the just people that are intolerant to truth completely, and they just completely deride us when we just speak out plainly and clearly and reasonably about truth. They say, oh, you are just a gatekeeper, you are just angry that we are happy, or whatever it is. And we couldn't care less in that sense. Everybody's free to do whatever the heck they want. But whenever you start chipping away at truth and somebody else's ability to aspire for that, then it becomes a general issue, right? It needs to be addressed. You need to be called out. You need to be put in your place as cheater, misleader. If anything, for the sake of someone else. If you're gonna remain in that seat, well, you can bring a horse to water, but you cannot make it drink, right? You're gonna do you, but not at the expense of others, not at the expense of real and traditional yoga. We're here to call it as it is. And then on the other hand, we have the other side of things, which is the other band of people who they can go as far as saying, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I agree with what these people are saying. I think it's true, and therefore I'm inspired by it. I don't do any change, noticeable change in the way I conduct myself, but I am inspired by this truth. So that's equally as damaging and as disingenuous and just hypocritical as the ones that just cannot take the truth at all. The intolerant crowd. So to be inspired, to change your own internal narrative from a victim to falo pa bogo tamasaswaba, which is you start acquiring all this inspiration and claim it as your own. You feel entitled to it because you were perhaps cheated by someone, you were misled by some of these cheaters, and now you feel like, oh, I've been a victim. To a certain extent, yes, you have been a victim, but that doesn't justify you doing exactly the same, just sugarcoating it or painting over it and saying that I'm inspired by traditional yoga, right? That doesn't make any sense. If you don't align, if you don't find yourself at the bottom of the ladder and say, I want to do this fully, wholeheartedly with my whole existence, right? And receive instruction, first be admitted into that position of studentship, and then receive instruction, then carry on the hard work. It's work. It's hard work. It's not just identity to put the shirt on and say like, all right, I agree with traditional yoga. I am inspired by traditional yoga, but I'm still doing my frigging nonsense. Like, it makes no difference. It doesn't change the fact that you're still cheating, even if you agree, even if you feel inspired by all these messages. It's equally as hypocritical. So yeah, that's a big issue, that people are very squirmy and yeah, like they weasel the way out of responsibility and accountability. The way to do things is do them right from the beginning. I've been cheated perhaps, and I've been cheating. All right, I accept that, I acknowledge that, I atone for that by then aligning to truth, acknowledging that there is objective truth and I should be in the pursuit of it instead of fabricating my own small reality, and then try to sell that, force that to others in their ignorance, and obviously finding like acceptance in this whole ocean of deceit. So if the ignorant majority is applauding your deceitful schemes, that's not a sign of progress or success. That's actually quite the opposite, a huge red flag that what you're doing is actually going against truth. All right, so now let's roll the conversations we had with Teji regarding more specifically discipline or the lack thereof, the misunderstanding of discipline, what discipline means actually, and the role of discipline in a spiritual culture, actual spiritual culture, not this sort of spiritualism. There is no discipline. It's just like a huge suggestion box for people just to pick. Oh, this one I like. This one not so much. So yoga becomes kind of like your life coach, right? And these people are like that. They say, no, I'm no guru, but they're still influencing and mentoring people in the art of deceit, deceiving themselves first of all, and then trying to deceive others. So let's roll the conversation and do that. So yeah, what do you think, especially like in the everyday life, and of course our context of yoga and the yoga scene, but also kind of like in modern society as well?
Yeah, you see that in this Kali Yuga, basically we get the whole package. So short memory and then greedy, lusty, you name it. What a time to be in this human form. But as you also mentioned something interesting, this dubious, like this hypocritical, that is usually come when you cannot follow up what you committed to in the first place. And it is this lack of discipline that is always causing the problem that we can see. You see that this discipline, sometimes we would assume that this kind of discipline is only relevant to to this Kriya Yoga or our tradition, Buddha Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, this kind of like practice involves some external, but you can see that in Sastra, this devotion, bhakti, and vairagya, they always come together. So, albeit like foolish in this Kali Yuga, if you have this quality of, like committed to what you, like being disciplined, you can go quite far with this attribute. And similarly, if you don't have that, you cannot proceed with the spiritual practice. Yeah, so this is also like the video that teacher just posted. So one main reason that yoga cannot really work anymore because of the society, like who are doing yoga? Mostly women, and also this kind of feminine men. Okay, it's not that they are, because you have to admit that this being disciplined is masculine energy. Okay, and it's not that this feminine energy, they are crook. It's not that way, but it is feminine energy to, you see, it is, you have to admit that it is feminine energy to express. You see, you need to express your feeling. That is for one. And then second, it is also feminine energy to be connected more to the emotion, and emotion come and go. And when you have these two things combined, so you cannot really, it's not that they are planning to, they are crook in that sense, but they, whenever they waste out their opinions or they waste out their commitment, it is true in that moment because it is connected to the emotion at that moment. So this is one of the problem in modern yoga. So, but it is that when it comes to the practice, you cannot do it the way you want, which is the problem nowadays. Because it's also the problem with the society. Okay, and then when you try to bring that into the tradition, it becomes problem. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, that's so true that like in society we are so used to kind of this kind of favoritisms, especially nowadays, like in modern society, this type of like Me Too movements and everything, which have perhaps like a good intention behind them, but at the end it's all corrupted because it's how much can I get away with, how much can I kind of get for myself, and that's already like the wrong perspective. When that gets permeated into yoga, it's completely opposite. In yoga we're supposed to actually serve, right? So this type of selfless pursuit of service, right, and understanding what service means, and realizing that that's the best thing that I could aspire for. That's my biggest benefit, to actually aim for something bigger than myself. But when the mentality is completely 180 degrees against it, that what do I get from this? We're already starting from the wrong point.
Yes, correct. And yeah, when you mentioned that, it's also like crossed my mind that sometimes that you see this kind of traditions, not only our tradition and all this kind of legit tradition, it's always corrupted from the inside, which you can see from this spiritual leader, because of this favoritism that you mentioned about. You see, our guru, he never shy away by quoting this kind of quote, like because in Sastra it is mentioned that women is less intelligent than men, and for a good reason. It's not that women or feminine energy or whatever, but it's not that they have lower IQ. Personal experience, I feel that like women around me, they usually have higher IQ compared to the men. But from Sastra perspective, is on this spiritual progression. But you can see that it's not in just our tradition, in other tradition, like people, like the priests, the pastor, they shy away from this kind of comment. So we are the one who are like the watchdog. We are the one who corrupted if we are not doing this properly. And you can see that our teacher, he never shy away from speaking this.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true.
Yeah, no matter the backlash or whatever, it has to be said, because you're right.
and this plays to what he was mentioning at the beginning of his video of this assassination of this political commentator, this Charlie Kirk, that if we stop saying what needs to be said, we are also part of the problem. If we are allowing the narrative to continue without actually outputting some based perspective, which is again not opinion based, but it's scriptural based, and that already has an authority on itself. So and again, it can be explained logically, can be explained spiritually, etc. I think also what you mentioned about intelligence being being measured in different ways, right? Like nowadays intelligence means basically how much money you can make or how much you can get away with, like I now quoting from next verse, it says in Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth, proper behavior, and fine qualities. So wealth, right? Like if I have a lot of money or power or whatever, wealth, I can get away with anything. And that's intelligence, right? If you see someone that has a lot of money, like drives a good car, and then you're like, oh, he's gotta be really intelligent. But
Smart. Yeah.
yeah, like
True that.
the the parameters or metrics for intelligence are completely off, are completely different when it comes to yoga. Someone's, and the teacher mentions again in the video, that who has a spiritual discrimination, that viveka, that's when we start measuring intelligence. And unfortunately, this type of sentimental, very overly emotional, um, behavior and mental structure, it hinders that type of discrimination and sobriety when it comes to intellect. And that's what it's meant by the more intelligent, less intelligent, just because of the basic structure or nature, let's say. Briefly brushing over stuff, but this first line, that men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction. And you see, if we just bring this this sentence on like a nowadays modern thing, people would be like, well, yeah, like what's the
Yeah. What else do you expect? But I'm just going to like bring it bring it close to our practice, like especially in preserving our tradition, is that I notice sometimes as a like teacher student, we sometimes we have this, maybe it's like good intention, there's some good intention behind that. We want to attract people to the practice by by this kind of yoga chikitsa or this, because there is this kind of benefit, like when you practice yoga, it promote health, or even like psychological benefit in a deeper level, like do this practice. But it shouldn't be something that we promote, because if we do this, it's just like as the scriptures say, it's the same superficial thing. And then once, because when the practice it go to certain level, and then you have to start compromising your health, your mental well-being. And then what happens then? The very reason that people practice with you is it's not that, so it wouldn't make sense for them anymore. So it would be a complete waste of time.
So womanliness and manliness, I think those two aspects related to what teacher was pointing out in his video, I think it's unfortunately really being lost. On the one side, you have women who have been, you could say, like neglected, and then themselves not knowing how to actually uh, keep a structure. So the neglect of women by also men who are feminine, feminine in traits, feminine in quality, and not actually being able to be disciplined, like you mentioned before. This has also developed into women that don't have that structure for actually womanliness. So now we see, women, even in the yoga context, voicing out and supporting things like abortion, for example, or men supporting things like meat eating, which are completely incompatible with yoga. And then at the same time, it's kind of like this completely, complete dichotomy between their personal beliefs and then what they're supposedly doing, which is yoga. They defend killing a baby in the womb, but then at the same time they speak about ahimsa and like meditation and whatnot. So it just kind of doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, like I kind of related to back to the topic of this discipline, because I see that not only that people are not disciplined, and then they kind of they do not understand the meaning of discipline. What is discipline? It means that you are willing to consistently to work on something, like commit to something, even though that thing would cause discomfort to you, but you know that it is beneficial to you over the long term. And also on the other side, it means that you are willing to give up things that you enjoy doing, because you know that it is an obstacle for you. But nowadays, people they use the word discipline very relatively. Like, if I enjoy like waking up every morning to do some stretching, and then I call it discipline. But when it comes to the topic that I don't like meat eating or this abortion, there's something that I don't want to do that. And then conveniently, I just, take it out from the context. And then you cannot call it discipline anymore. That is the opposite of discipline. It's still back to this bhava, this raga, dvesa, subha of subha, manomaya level. And this is the problem with the whole thing. Not only that people do not understand the word discipline, but they don't get it. Okay, this is the opposite of discipline. It's the opposite of commitment into something.
That's such a good point, actually. That the idea of compromise is like non-existent, basically. If we call discipline doing the things that I like to do anyway, then what's the actual thing?
Yeah, you defeat the word discipline means.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, that's about it, I think. Do you have any other points? Finalizing points?
No.
Okay. Let's see.
Great talking to you, guys.
Yeah, same. Thank you for agreeing to discussing this stuff, and hopefully we can do that also in the future. Yes. Thank you, Teji.
Near future.
Yes.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
All right, so to wrap this up and to come to a conclusion, screeching conclusion is this age is influencing people to become more deceitful, to become more hypocritical, and to become less tolerant of truth. We have to tolerate people's stupidity and idiocy, ignorance, and we have to tolerate the fact that that's the mainstream, right? Like, that's what's popular. People selling just watered down Kool-Aid nonsense in the guise of yoga, and sometimes inspired by traditional yoga, but having nothing to do with actual parampara and true lineage, sampradayas, nothing. Okay, we have to tolerate that, and we have to still work, and we have to still do our thing, and tolerate that, basically. Okay, so intolerance is on the other side. When we speak out truth, saying like, you might be doing whatever you're doing, but that's not yoga, and I can explain why that's not yoga in a very simple and pinpointed way. There's no validation from any angle for whatever you're doing. So when we say this, when we call people out, there's a complete intolerance, right? People cannot bear to hear the truth anymore. So that's the conclusion, that if you cannot bear the truth, if you cannot build some character and spine to withstand the truth, then you don't have any place in anything near and close to yoga.